Welcome, everybody. My name is Graham Brady, and with me today is
Merrissa Nona.
we are from two extraordinary groups. I am part of the Kunjur Men's Group that was formed in Cairns. I will say is that it was brought about by an urgency being that men's business, especially here in the Cairns region and the district, weren't being looked at, weren't being attended to. So these things came about 4 years ago. It was actually my son. I'm wearing a Pamagiri t-shirt, and my son was one of the Pamagiri dancers. And he said to me 4.5 years ago, he said, "Dad, you know what? We have no men's group here in Cairns." So in remembrance of him, in remembrance of my boy, Wawo Kawanji, myself, Bernard Sabadi, and Casey formed the men's group. And our brother, Bernie Singleton Sr., who is an integral part of the Kunjur men's group. That is a short history on our coming together and forming this. As I was saying, 4.5 years now we've been operating, and we've just been funded, and hopefully this first podcast will introduce the listeners to many things that we intend to do in the future. But here with me is Merrissa. And Merrissa, could you tell them a little bit about the formation of DIG?
Yes.
And the reasons behind forming DIG?
So, DIG, which stands for Deadly Inspiring Youth Doing Good, was originally a volunteer group of young people who graduated from a leadership program here in Cairns, the Indigenous Leaders of Tomorrow program. And what this cohort of young people were doing was coming together to form a peer support program and be able to empower themselves to give back to community. So we, as a little group of young people, all under the age of 25, decided that we wanted to formalize our group and become an incorporated body. So in 2016, after volunteering in our community and giving, and being auspiced by various and supported by various different corporations in our community, took control of our destiny, and we became an incorporated body, which meant that we were able to apply for grants. We were able to decide what it is that young people wanted to do, and we were able to pursue the kind of activities that we wanted to do. So the young people who were a part of the founding of our corporation were delivering well-being camps, and they were taking young people on country down Mariuppa Way. We connected with the TOs down there, and first year we started with 12 members, and in the fourth year we had 34 members coming, participating from as far as Aurukun, coming down to participate in a camp that was designed by young people, and it encompassed conversations around AOD, drugs and alcohol. It encompassed conversations about mental health and well-being, meditation, healthy lifestyle choices and stuff. So we knew we were on a good thing, because these kinds of topics that these young people wanted to explore and learn more about were actually highlighted by them themselves. So in 2019, Stacey Ketchell, Smarjos, and myself resigned from our previous employers, and we embedded a lot of time into building our corporation up. So we are really fortunate to have the support of the entire community, our families, our uncles, our aunties, but also the leadership in our Indigenous services and non-Indigenous services, seeing the potential in what DIG could become. So we're very fortunate to be able to have a corporation that is so diverse in the type of services that we offer, and that it is all designed by young people for young people.
Yeah, that sounds like the best formula. Because our times have changed, especially when I was young, and there are members in our group who are older, and because the men's collective, that is how Kunju operates, we'd like to become part of the wider understanding of what we can do for our people, young and old. So that probably brings me to the next question, our partnershiping. We came together, I think, you remember the time when we sort of had our first meeting together and said, we more or less on the same plane here?
Yep. It was in the middle of COVID, Uncle.
Yeah, that'll be right.
And we had a meeting about the increase in youth crime. And we were like, what can our elders do and what can our youth do? And we brought together some really prominent people in our community, people from government and non-government, to hear about the strategies that we were working on. And we were definitely separate at the time, but we had the same vision, and everything that fell out of our mouth pretty much aligned. So that was kind of how we kind of started feeling that our visions were the same.
It may be because that there was an opportunity that arose, and obviously we see that the impact of what social well-being is about for our people, that we needed to make sure that the well-being of our mental state, the well-being of our physical state, and also our spiritual state, that there had to be put a notice there. So us being a men's group, that is what we have identified. And then when we heard about DIG and the young people and what we were doing for those, that automatically brought about this partnership. That's the way I looked at it. It's because we got the same cause. We have the same concerns. We have the same dealings with the same aspects of what is the 21st century Aboriginal and island person. It has totally changed from how the departments and the governments of the time, and I'd go back to pre-referendum. Let us give understanding to how these things came about, especially us Aboriginal people and island people dealing with government that goes way back to the 1930s. There was a progress committee formed in, I think it was La Perouse in Sydney, and the Aboriginal people, and I suppose that was the best place where it could come out of, because Sydney being the first established colony, the first wave of Europeans to actually come and start being a part of the landscape, where our access to our native foods and native medicines was prohibited. So we had this interaction that there had to be some type of working between white and blackfella. So taking that into consideration, we come right through, and I'll jump forward now to the 60s. And the 60s were actually a big awakening period for the whole world. There was saying as such, make love and not war. And there was a consciousness that this planet is actually very, very sacred to all human beings. So we started recognizing, and this was back in my time of growing up. And now we jump forward to 20th century. And then we jump even further into the future to the 21st century. And the makeup of our people had to change. So the services provided had to change. So we see the need more now for grassroots interaction among our own people,
Yes.
dealing with these causes, dealing with the sensitivity of domestic violence,
Yep.
the sensitivity of homelessness, the sensitivity of our Aboriginality and our island heritage.
Yes.
And I think that's what brought us together.
I agree. And for us, because we're young people, we always need to be guided by our elders and leaders. And we know that we don't have we don't want to step out of our cultural boundaries. We love that these cultural protocols exist because they help us to know our place in our community, in our society. And we know that as a youth corporation established by young people, we had to have a relationship with our leaders and elders in our community. For us, we see Kunja as not just our men's group, because we're female dominated. Our corporation, we are female young leaders.
And proud of it.
And proud of it. But we also know that we need to have that male perspective. We need our young men to step up. We need to have those platforms for them. But we also know that with having the eldership in Kunja, that helps to keep us grounded as well. It helps to remind us around the struggles that you fought for back in those days and how we need to be able to develop in this day and age those programs that are about taking those opportunities that you gave us. So for us, we sought the relationship with Konja and saw that what you were creating is absolutely necessary. We felt loss in amongst our young people. And as part of what we identify as the contributing factors to disempowerment amongst our young people was that we didn't have spaces that we could come together and empower each other, that we could address our mental health, that we could have supportive conversations with people who saw it from our perspectives. One of the hardest things that we find very difficult to articulate to non-Indigenous service providers who are designed to support young people in general is understanding the perspectives that we come from. We feel and see and think this world differently. And I think for us, having the experiences that you have, the connection to country, the connection to our families, the linkages that both in our political leadership, in our cultural leadership, and in all of those things that help us to be grounded to achieve our vision. For us, it is that honor to have you a part to keep us connected and keep us grounded for those things, because we don't want to get too big and think that we're, because like you said, we're about healing our people and we have to come from a grassroots perspective.
And I'd say from the grassroots perspective, using family as the first institution of all human beings, that is how we operate.
That's our practice framework at DIG. Our whole thing is family. Mm. So my staff are my brothers and sisters. I may be the leader of our corporation, but I have equal responsibility to do the dishes. I have equal responsibility to look after my kin that walk through the door. And I have equal responsibility to empower my team every single day. And for me, that is the most important thing, that we look at this not as a corporation, but as a family first. You're my uncle. And I have, an obligation to you as someone to learn from you. You have, I have so much respect. I've got things that I need to do and I know my place in our relationship. And I feel that for us, what we're seeing with young people who are disconnected and dysregulated in our community is they've never had an opportunity to learn what their place is in a structured family unit, in a healthy family. And so this is how we want to demonstrate how our corporation and how First Nations people heal each other from a peer-to-peer perspective.
And that's totally true, because without the family unit, how do you learn when you are developing?
Exactly.
Your first developments as a young child, and would like to make this point, especially with mothers and fathers, young children who have yet to be mothers and fathers. maybe they could take this advice on board, is that the first sound that a child hears is his or her mother's heartbeat.
Yes.
And from that one space of learning within the womb of a mother, that child identifies other voices. So when the father is talking, that child actually identifies within the womb his or her father's voice.
Yes.
Sisters, brothers, cousins, and whatever. So the family unit is being developed from within the womb.
Yes.
And what a beautiful way to operate.
Absolutely.
In the open world.
Yep.
Now we come to this part. How do we bring that back?
Yeah.
Because there has been a lot of disorientation, both mind and body.
Yes.
How do we make our young and old member? Old people were once young too.
Yeah.
So we've got to relearn things as well.
Yes.
Maybe because those teachings were abandoned or maybe was separated from us, because we understand the intergenerational trauma, we understand the stolen generation situation, and we also understand how damaging the system is. Alcoholism, drug taking, all these things damage a person individually.
Yes.
So to keep that family perspective running is one of the most beautiful, could I say, even go beyond that, is a perfect way to look after our people. And knowing your place and knowing your understanding and learning, forever learning within the family structure. So maybe Australia as a whole, and we're talking non-Indigenous people. So we'd like to include you, the non-Indigenous people. For a lot of those ones, when I was growing up, we've had ones that non-Indigenous, ones that I've called auntie and uncle. It is because they came into our family. And so the way we chucked respect out to them is that we included them as an uncle or an auntie.
We do that here in our corporation. So our building that we've currently got is completely donated by community. So everything you see from the furniture, all of that sort of stuff came from our people in the community who saw that we wanted to do good. We have individuals, non-Indigenous individuals, who are phenomenal, who are not about just wanting to give to us, but teach us. And they're here giving their time, and they run their own business to teach us things that help us to grow our company, to keep us legitimate, and to help us to improve. Rather than doing it for us, they're upskilling us. So we've given them that title and explained to them the title of Uncle Mike. We have Uncle Mike who comes in and he does our tech. He earned that because he gives, he teaches, he's a part of our family now. He sits down and has lunch with us and has coffee with us, but then he'll go fix our internet, and it's that sort of stuff that we go from a corporation and a cultural perspective. We're showing him honor.
Yes.
And that's what we want to do. We need our young people to see that we've got to come back to this cultural framework.
Yes.
And that cultural framework is family first. And we need to show that our families are not nuclear. It's not just me and you. It is everybody in our community. The village raises the child.
Yes. And I think a lot of people have come to know that way of producing good human beings and productive human beings can only get better if it stays within those parameters and that course.
Yes.
Whatever happens outside the political spectrum, the social spectrum, it all always comes back to the individual. And I think that's where we place our emphasis, is that even though we operate as a collective or a group, and we have our meetings every Wednesday at 6:30, that whoever comes or goes still feel they're inclusive
Exactly.
into what we are trying to achieve. Like an example is that when we make a decision as a collective, that is what we do. We throw it out there,
Yep.
and some of our attendees have probably only showed up within the last 4 years, probably only a couple of times, but we took on board how they would like to see Kunjur run.
Yep.
And we've taken that. So we've still extended our way of operations, but also keeping that door open for suggestions, for more intake of the best way we could operate. And we will always be like that. And I think that's what led to our partnershiping.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is what makes a good community function.
Absolutely.
As you said, the village raises the child.
Yep.
Well, how does a village run? Everybody has their functions, their part within the village. But we're all what's that word? Complement one another.
That's it.
We all complement one another to the greater good.
That's it.
And I think if we remain grassroots, this is our thinking, and we're coming from an elderly perspective and an intergenerational perspective, because ours are not just retirees or ones that are having a hard time or ones that need help. It's not from that perspective. We make sure that when we put the best foot forward, I would say, for our people and non-Indigenous people as well, is that we make sure that we keep within the grassroots framework.
Agree.
Without the understanding of what it's like to be homeless, without the understanding what it's like to suffer domestic violence, without the understanding of suffering intergenerational trauma, not having a job, suicidal thoughts, or without those things, we cannot achieve what has to be done. And all that operation, all that fear, all that worthlessness, it's all within the grassroots area.
Mm-hmm.
If we go above that one there and start operating departmentally, we lose sight of the true understanding of why you're there.
That's right.
And I'll say it again, I think that's what really brought us together as a partnership, because we are grassroots people, and for our sake, we'll always remember to stay within the grassroots realm.
Yep.
Using departmental procedures and processes, because we've got to live in the system.
Got to tick boxes.
You've got to tick the boxes.
Yep.
And there is, it takes money to operate these days. The goodness out of our heart, those days are gone now.
That's it.
And we'd love to still operate like that, but the system won't acknowledge that anymore. You've got to be within the system's fabric to be able to operate. But what the system won't dictate to our men's group is that how we achieve our operation. It is from the ground up.
That's it.
And when we see ones benefiting, and this is the individuals within our men's group, and bearing in mind, listeners, it's when we talk about men's group and collective, we are talking about the ones who attend for 1, 2, or 3 times. They might attend and we won't see them again. They were still part of our collective, and we still treasure that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, where does this all go from here?
Yes.
We have formed ourselves. We have formed our partnership. Yes. We want to do the best for our people. So what do you see on the horizon, in the future, immediate or far future? How do you think, with our operations, both Kunjur and Dij, that we can go? Where can we take this?
Well, so many things can happen, you know. One of the strengths that Dig has is a really clear governance structure. So when we talk about working within the systems, we get the systems. We all have worked in jobs and in for government or non-government where the systems have really prevented First Nations perspectives being embedded in the daily interactions. So for us, our partnership is, you know, it is about sharing those skill sets. It's about young people connecting with you, Uncle, and you knowing where their lineage is. It's finding that sort of stuff. Our partnership is not just it's going to showcase to the community what genuine First Nations perspective, being embedded in daily interactions, being embedded in the operations of the business looks like. And we're going to be able to showcase to the rest of the community that with it's because it's so scary what we've done, isn't it? There's so many barriers that people go, well, I would love to do what you do, but I'm too scared to leave the security of my job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too scared to speak up about this sort of stuff. And we go, well, yeah, we're scared too. But we've taken that leap because someone has to do it. We've tokenistically been taken advantage of in all levels, whether it is developing something, someone gets $1 million, you know, the white researcher gets the $1 million and the person who goes and gets all the data gets 20,000, you know, in wages. It's so many injustices from so many different levels that I think where we can go with this is proving on a national level what grassroots, that each community has its own individual needs, and that has to be from those people to heal their people. They need to be taught what governance is. They need to be taught what our history is. They deserve to have that right. And we can definitely grow and heal. And we're going to expand. We're going to have as many people in our community who have those ideas but are too scared. And we're going to come together as a collective and we're going to empower each other to change the narrative. So some of our focus in our leadership program is around challenging stereotypes and changing narratives. So that's one of our goals. So definitely believe that we're going to achieve so many things.
Yes, and I could honestly see that is going to be a good expansion of Kunjur.
Mm-hmm.
With the activities that we are yet to roll out. These are things that are in the early stages.
Oh, yes.
What was unique, and just going back to the formation of Kunjur, is that for 4.5 years we've been operating just on the goodwill of the main core group, who I mentioned earlier. And it was out of necessity, like a lot of things are out of necessity. But now we have seen that through a little bit of funding, that we can actually function better within the system. Staying outside the system, you are really scratching for progress. But we have to come within the system to link up with different services, to referrals to different services. So we have to become a part of the fabric, the social fabric. And that does not inhibit us still doing what we need to do. So where I see Kunjur going from where we are now is that we would like to see us as a men's group that has a say within the political spectrum, in the health spectrum, and within the spiritual spectrum. Because our spirituality is still most important to us. And what that looks like now, I don't know. I can't answer that. But that's where we are hoping that we will expand to. It's no good having a voice and not being heard.
That's it.
No good operating from the grassroots area and still not uplifting the others with you.
That's it.
We are there to make sure that when we rise up, they rise up with us. And that is one of our programs. It's called a Rise Up program, that we uplift ourselves And at the same token, we uplift those whom we help.
Yep.
It's been fun talking to you about where we came from and where we're about to go.
Thank you very much for having me today.
This is Merrissa Nona and Graham Brady, partnershiping Kunjur Men's Group and
Didge.
thank you for listening.